Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Life Science Rundown. This is Nicholas Capman with the FDA Group. Before we jump into our discussion for today, just a little bit about the FDA Group. We help life science companies in the areas of quality assurance, regulatory affairs, clinical operations, commissioning, qualification, and validation, as well as pharmacovigilance. We offer three different engagement models, which are consulting, staff augmentation, and full-time employer recruitment. So if you ever find yourself in need, just head over to the FDAgroup.com to check us out and get in touch. So today I'm speaking with Chris Masterson. Hey, Chris.
Hey, Nicholas, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you.
Okay. Before we jump into our topic, would you kindly introduce yourself?
Yeah, so my name is Chris Masterson. I am the Senior Vice President and Chief Quality Officer for Tolmar. I've worked in the biopharmaceutical industry for the last, 36 years. Started in 1989, way before some of you were born, likely. And married, have two children, two beautiful children, care about everybody. And I'm almost 60 years old now. And I'm on the twilight of my career. What I'm trying to do now is really better develop the talent for the future of biopharmaceuticals.
Okay, well, that's a great sequitur into the topic. So, our topic for today is how can biopharmaceutical organizations build and maintain a strong quality culture, accounting for time, leadership support, measurable results, key skills, and the internal and external factors that drive or hinder success. So, there's a lot to uncover there. Why don't we start here? So, how would you define a quality-driven culture? And why is it essential for long-term success?
Yeah, I'll start with my definition of culture and then I'll get into the definition of what other people think.
Okay.
So, my definition of culture is the way things are done around here. Some companies that I've worked with are very, very family oriented, some are authoritarian, some are friendly, some are accountable, hardworking, driven, fun, etc. I think that the way things are done around here is what I define as culture. The dictionary defines it a little differently. They say the shared values, attitudes, and practices that characterize an organization and influence how its members behave and interact. I would say quality driven is about how people perceive doing things right the first time.
Mm.
In pharmaceuticals, quality is typically about GXP compliance, where GXP equals the X is algebraic and it equals good manufacturing practices, good clinical practices, good distribution practices, et cetera. And it's about GXP compliance. It's really not about quality. Quality originally, as defined, was really Deming, Duran, Crosby, and all about operational excellence, Lean Six Sigma, that sort of thing. But in the pharmaceutical industry, it's more about the compliance of the organization, the biopharmaceutical organization. So I recently helped write a standard for the PDA, the Parenteral Drug Association. We had a task force and I was one of the co-authors of a new standard on quality culture.
Mm.
So it's the reference is ANSI PDA standard 06-2025. It's the assessment of quality culture, and it gives you tools, models, and it's a new standard that was written earlier this year. I wrote very little of that, and my
Mm.
colleagues wrote most of it, and it was a really good standard. It talks a lot about quality culture and how to drive that quality culture and also how to measure it.
Mm. So it's a great resource for people that are want to read more about it.
Yeah. And a quality-driven culture is typically defined as a culture where employees see, hear, and feel quality everywhere in their jobs. Quality and compliance, including patient safety, are always top of mind and trump financial performance, with the understanding that we are for-profit companies, but embedding a quality culture, reducing waste, reducing non-value added work, and organizational churn really helps the business save costs through cost saving, though cost savings should not be the goal, but will also be a result.
Hmm. So a nice addition, which could catch a lot of people's attention, and that kind of leads me into the next one, which is culture. Really, for all intents and purposes, is encapsulated within a single organization. So while you could have multiple subcultures, really there's an overarching culture. And quality is really just one part of an organization. So, can you help the audience understand, for those that want a quality-driven culture, how can they embed it across all the functions from the executive leadership down to the frontline staff?
Yeah, great question. I don't think you're going to ever see nirvana um, when quality is truly embedded across the organization because it's still called work. It's not play. We don't call it play. We call it work because you have to do your job, right? However, it'll make it a lot easier if it's more fun, enjoyable to be with people. So people have that misconception that work is fun. I contend that work can be fun and is rewarding, but you're paid for doing a job.
Hmm.
So one needs to be realistic in setting expectations. And a cornerstone of resilient people is, having that realistic expectation. So a quality culture is when the values of an organization are shared and lived up and down the organization. But people know what is important. So patient centricity may be a company value, but if not embedded into everyone and acted upon, it's simply a word that people just don't believe. So
Hmm.
values need to be consistent and everyone needs to be accountable to these values through recognition, rewards, and also punishment. If doing things right the first time is a value, but no one practices it, that's part of the culture. If
Hmm.
producing lots of subpar product is more important than producing excellent product the first time, eliminating waste in non-value added work, that is part of the culture.
Hmm.
So accept it or identify it and change it. But that takes much effort and support to do that, but it's very worthwhile. Like I tell people in my life, the most difficult things are always difficult. The most important things are so difficult, but very worthwhile and rewarding. Let's see, do I have anything
That's
else?
a fact of life right there. Um, the other thing I know, just speaking about culture, is you will always have one, whether you want one or not. And because that is the fact, you can either allow the culture to happen or you can be intentional about creating the culture that you want. So let's say, we've got the people on board, right? Across all the different functions from top to bottom. They say, yes, I see the value in embedding quality. While it won't be nirvana and we have a lot of other priorities, we will do our best in order to kind of embed that into the fabric of the organization. So, um, how does leadership foster this? How do they create it? And then kind of to your last point, how do you hold them accountable for doing it?
Yeah, so I would say leadership has a very large role in setting culture for the organizations. So the executives in most companies drive culture. If the CEO believes in profit before everything, for example, I don't know if you remember Volkswagen and their problems with hiding the high
Oh yeah,
emissions.
I remember that. Yep.
Uh, Yep. So that's a problem, and that becomes the culture. So so the executive or the CEO of that company drove what I would consider a fairly poor culture. If backstabbing and politics and fear is allowed by the CEO and executives, that is the culture of the company. Rewards are given for those behaviors. Alternatively, if the CEO and the executives place a high value on quality, compliance, and doing things right the first time, and reward and recognize those behaviors, the organization becomes that, and what I consider a quality organization.
Um, as I think about the different types of companies in our space, especially those that are public, that are responsible for reporting and achieving quarterly goals, there's always this balance between short-term results while at the same time planning for the long term, right? That's a difficult balance to kind of manage. So, as it pertains to this topic, how can the executives, maintain that balance or drive that cultural transformation while making sure that we're focused on short-term goals but also planning for that longer term outcome?
I'm going to answer this in a little different way than you'd probably expect me to.
Love
So,
it.
uh, if you don't mind.
Love it. Love it.
Okay. So I recently read a book from an ex-Navy SEAL. His name is Rich Diviney. And this is after I listened to him speak in person. So he's an ex-Navy SEAL trainer. And he explained to Navy SEALs how to adapt and how to become resilient and get through all this Navy SEAL training. Okay. He worked with a neuroscientist also. What's his name? Andrew Huberman. So Andrew Huberman is a neuroscientist, and he helped this Navy SEAL trainer train Navy SEALs. And he used a really good technique where he leveraged neuroscience behind how he did that. So, and that was to better train the Navy SEALs to overcome uncertainty and fear. Okay, so and I just mentioned this because it really made me feel like a lot of the things that I do naturally, he's actually teaching and is based on neuroscience. So he stated that fear equals uncertainty plus anxiety. So he went on to state that your frontal lobe, responsible for rational decision making, can be overwhelmed when environments are uncertain. Autonomic arousal increases in the limbic system, or the lizard or reptilian brain, takes over from the frontal lobe, which they call amygdala hijack. So the limbic system is important as a survival mechanism. For example, when a tiger or a forest fire is present, and you need a boost of energy and heightened alertness to run. However, our poor bodies are bombarded with perceived threats all the time, and we need to learn how to control them. Okay, so this is when we need a way to manage these short-term business pressures by leveraging like respiratory tools. There are breathing techniques and visual tools that we can use to calm our system down so we don't get into that amygdala hijack mode. So I also keep visual reminders in front of me to help me constantly recall what's important. Values, goals, priorities, whatever. I need visual reminders to allow me to focus. So I suggest you figure out what you need, but I always keep in front of me those things that I'm really not good at as a reminder, and I put it on my desk. I tape it to my computer, and I really try to understand and improve how I do things and keep it in front of me and keep those visual tools there at all times. I don't know if I answered the question. Did I?
A bit. I wanted to ask you a follow-up question though. That list, is that static or is it dynamic?
Which list? I'm sorry.
You said the list that you have taped. It's
Oh
always
no,
in front.
that's totally dynamic, and it's about where you are in your career at the time and what you need to focus on. Whether there are skill gaps, whether there are leadership gaps, whatever that is, and what you need to focus on. Like one of the things about me, the things that make me strong and good at my job are also the weaknesses for myself. So one of my strengths is courageous authenticity, right? So I am always courageously authentic. I don't change who I am in front of anyone, which is a good thing and a bad thing, okay? Because I'm also
It's
considered
honest, which I would
very,
say in the balance of good and bad, it's mostly good. So continue.
yes, but it can also be seen as arrogance. So when you're courageous and authentic, you can also be perceived as arrogant. So the opposite, it's the positive and the negative to the same type of behavior. So the confidence and arrogance are very, very close, right? And
Yeah.
confidence, when you're courageously authentic, that seems like very strong confidence, but it also could seem to be arrogance depending on the type of person you are.
I think the courageous authenticity is the scientific part. The artistic part is your delivery of your confidence, which I think could eliminate the perception of
Uh,
conceit and
but
arrogance.
that's a skill, not an attribute. So
Oh,
attributes.
yes, for sure. Yes, you're right.
So
Yep.
you can learn that skill to
Mm.
overcome your attribute, though. But your attribute, you really don't change attributes over time. But I'm
Mm.
sorry, continue.
One of the reasons why I asked if it was static or dynamic is I have a static list of 12 daily affirmations I read out loud every day.
Yeah, great.
And one of the things I like about my list, I'm looking at it now, is it reminds me every day that if it's not on that list, it doesn't matter.
I
Um,
agree.
and so I actually got this from, there was a surfer, world renowned, one of the best surfers of all time out of South Africa. He had his own surfing brand, highly successful in South Africa during the apartheid. Had a son, and there was this game they played in South Africa where they would strangle each other with a necktie.
Nice.
I guess maybe for Americans that are of similar age to you and I, maybe like, remember birthday punches? Did you ever get birthday punches? Yeah,
Mm,
so all right, where I grew up, if you were like 12, all your friends got to punch you in the arm 12 times. Yeah, so the
okay.
older you got, the worse it got. So anyway, I guess it was something like that. Unfortunately, his son died at the age of 11. And it was their only child. And so, you've had this person that was growing to this exceptional level of, success and self-worth and happiness, just to have everything completely collapse, right? And so he had to, he wrote this book called The Surfer's Code, and it was kind of a dedication for him to restart his broken life and how he could focus on now what is important in order to be the best person that he can be. And I saw him at a conference live, and that was kind of what inspired me to create my own 12 daily affirmations. So,
Love it, Nicholas. That's great. I do the same thing. I have about 13 or 14, and I call them priorities, what really matters to me.
oh yeah,
And, my first one is family first. I'm a husband and father. That's my first identity. So, and you can have multiple identities or multiple affirmations for yourself. Love this. I don't know if you had listened to the TED Talk from Lucy Hahn. She talks about the three secrets of resilient people. And she had a similar issue where her daughter died in a car crash in New Zealand. And she talks about the secrets of resilience and how to become a resilient person. Really great TED Talk.
yeah. I mean, just absolutely amazing. Hopefully, I never have to learn how to be that type of resilient. But I don't know how I could offer any more deep respect to somebody
Yeah,
that's able to achieve that.
I agree.
All right, so we're taking a hard left back onto our topic. Um, so we've talked about we got everybody in agreement about the quality driven culture. We've gotten the executive management support. Um, and we talked about the balance between short-term goals and long-term outcomes. My next question is, what's a realistic timeline when you're shifting toward a quality-centric culture? And then within that timeline, what are some stages or milestones that people can expect to see that would mark their progress?
Well, Warren Buffett, I don't, you know Warren Buffett, right?
Who doesn't?
So he said it takes 20 years to build a reputation and 5 minutes to ruin it.
Oh,
Okay.
absolutely. Especially in this
So,
industry.
yeah. Do you remember recently the astronomer CEO and the head of HR were called out at a Coldplay concert? Do you remember that?
Oh, yeah.
So, how do you think this impacted the company culture? I'm sure there was a significant impact. They kind of shifted it around and built on it, but those types of things really hurt a culture. So the timeline to radically shift a culture, I'd say it depends on like many factors. For example, how bad is the culture now? Is the CEO still damaging the culture? I mentioned Volkswagen and the CEO. That's probably not going to change over time unless you have a new CEO or a fully new leadership team.
Right.
How's the senior leadership impacting it? How fast can you replace negative people? I'm always concerned with an organization that has a lot of negative people, complainers, that has a lot of politics, gossipers. They ruin cultures.
Big time.
Um, So generally, I'd say it takes 3 to 5 years to radically change a company culture,
Mm.
but it has to have the support of senior leadership. And living the company's values is important and must be incentivized and disincentivized when going against it. So we have to hold people accountable to what we say is the culture. So I would say it takes consistency, repetition, caring, in a mindset of improvement to shift a culture, as well as perseverance, collaboration, and patience. Those things combined will drive and change a culture, but it's not easy. And again, it comes from the top a lot of the times. And at the bottom of the organization, you'll see when you have a great quality culture. I mentioned this this PDA standard that I helped write. That really allows you to look at your culture, measure it at a certain point in time, and then understand, when you take certain steps to improve it, you can measure it again and you can see how much better it's gotten over time. So it's a semi-quantitative way of measuring culture.
Mm. Love it. One thing I wanted to insert into the conversation is this concept of leadership. So your leaders are not defined by their seat within the organization. So you could be in the C-suite, and that doesn't mean you're a leader. Um, it means that you're at the top of the organization. So when we say leadership is really responsible for pushing this, it means that they need to have the trust of the people that report into them. And a simple equation that allows the audience listening to this to understand if their people trust them is it's character times competence. So to the Coldplay thing, he probably had the perception of good character. And if he was competent, then the people were willing to follow him. And the reason that that culture probably got destroyed after that moment is because now he no longer can balance that equation. He lost the character piece, even though he still may be competent. And so therefore he has no trust, and therefore his people aren't willing to follow him. I assume that's probably what happened. I don't see how it couldn't. And then kind of to your point, he's going to have to redevelop it or be moved out in order to, get things back on track. Um, let me move into the next question that we have. So we've got you said 3 to 5 years is kind of generally what you can expect. Um, I assume with any sort of project such as this, you're going to need resources, time, um, which means it's going to cost money or investment of time, which costs money because it's people's hours. And sometimes quality and compliance is perceived as not revenue generating. So as we're moving toward this quality-centric culture, in those instances where we might want to have print out things and put them on the wall, or we want to have a training, or all of the different things that come with building this new foundation that we're trying to create, while at the same time understanding that we're not sales, we're not business development. If our audience is getting questions from the C-suite, how do they handle some of those questions from leadership about and the ability to justify any sort of time or cost associated with this initiative?
Well, I'd first say you have to have a return on your investment, right? So, but it doesn't have to be financial. Your return on your investment can be an improved compliance, an improved culture. One thing that, like, one of the organizations that I worked at did was improved the quality of their operations. And I'm not talking about compliance, but reducing non-value added work using Lean Six Sigma or operational excellence tools to remove waste in the organization. Removing waste allows you to focus on all the other things that you'd never get time to do. So there's got to be a return. It could be an efficiency gain for the organization, but there has to be a return. If you have no return, finance will never approve it. Okay. However, you can improve your compliance, and there's a return there that you can justify. So, for example, a consent decree. If you get a consent decree for a pharmaceutical company, I know some companies that have gotten them. It cost them $500 million. Okay.
Have you seen the meme that goes across LinkedIn with the two mason jars?
No.
You haven't seen that? So it says a
No.
mason jar. It says QA budget before a consent decree, and it's got a few coins. And then it says budget after a consent decree, and it's filled.
Yes, it's exactly right. You never want to get to that point where you have to be reactive and deal with a warning letter, consent decree, seizure, all that sort of thing. You want to be proactive and make sure it doesn't happen for your organization. And you have to have a leader. Well, to your point, a leader, from my perspective, a leader means or is defined by a person that has followers. That's a leader. If you have no followers, you're not a leader. I don't care what your title is.
And that was exactly my point. How do you get people to follow you? They have to trust you. In order to trust you, you have to have character times competence.
Yes. And it's exactly right. You build trust in an organization, that's typically done through consistency of approach. It's patient safety first, always, and then product quality, and then regulatory compliance. In that order. You can't not care about patient safety. It always has to be paramount in an organization. And there's consistency. And when you use that and you live that culture, it's embedded throughout the organization through consistency.
Another thing that we know is there's no control without measurement. So with that said, what are some of the different metrics that we need to be focused on as we're engaging in this type of initiative?
Well, I would say don't do it yourself. I referenced this PDA, this quality culture survey. Use that. I mean, this is biopharmaceuticals that we're talking about, and it was written for biopharmaceutical companies. So do the survey. Measure and understand where you are. I mean, it's accessible to everyone. Go on the PDA website and you can find it, the Parenteral Drug Association. Do the survey. Figure out where you are today. You may be better off today than you think you are. I found that out for the company that I did the survey for, and we were much better than I expected. So understand where you are and understand those areas you need to improve on, and then go there. Don't try to do it by yourself. I wouldn't hire a consultant to do this because it's simple and you can do it easily. Or I know Gartner is another source. They do a lot of benchmarking. They also have a quality culture survey. But there are other resources available to people that's free that you can do yourself. Rather than trying to figure out what metrics count, use what other people have used in the past. They're the experts. Why not just copy their work? It's easier that way.
You were sharing some stories earlier, and we all love stories. So, is there a story that you can recall right now where you took an organization from point A to point B and established a quality-centric culture? And what were some of the things in terms of the before and after that happened in terms of compliance, efficiency, innovation? Things of that nature.
So I'll just tell you one story, and it's about after a FDA inspection at one of the companies I worked at. It didn't go so well. It didn't go as well as expected. There was a concern that we may get a warning letter. Probably not much of a concern, but still a concern. So after the FDA inspection, we had to go through this remediation effort. Okay. So there was a big 1 year, maybe 2 year remediation effort. And it was about post FDA remediation meeting, and we'd have this monthly meeting. We'd talk about how we're responding, how we're following up to the FDA, send them updates on a quarterly basis, even if they didn't ask for it,
Yep.
and go through this remediation effort. Well, over time, that went away. We had a next FDA inspection. It went very well. I'm very happy about that one. But we never changed the focus. All we did is change the name of this meeting, kept the same meeting, but it became a inspection readiness steering committee. So we always wanted to be inspection ready. So we just stopped remediating problems, and we started being proactive and really focusing on identifying issues early, understanding the risks, mitigating the risks over time, and still focusing on improving, but not waiting for the FDA to find something. We're doing it ourselves well before they come. Also, bringing in external consultants. For example, Peter Baker. I don't know if you know Peter Baker, but I would say he's probably becoming a friend of mine because we're dealing with him a fair amount, using him as a consultant to do our mock inspections and other things, and really has a good understanding of compliance. He actually spoke in front of the Senate not that long ago, and he probably will again, talking about what he considers unregulated markets. Like, he spent time in India and China. And he just spoke in front of the Senate and talking about these unregulated markets, especially as it comes to generics in the US, especially for the elderly, where we're getting products that may not be of high quality in the US. So
Does that mean it's unregulated though?
well, he considers it unregulated. He's worked there. Just because the way the market is set up there and the regulation in those markets. So he doesn't believe that those governments are heavily regulating those markets.
For their own internal population, not ours.
No, yeah, we're talking about China and India.
Right, but we import drugs from those regions. So are you talking about those manufacturers selling to their own population or to our population?
To our most products that we get, most APIs now come from, I believe, India and China right now.
Yeah, it's over 50%.
And a lot of generics are coming from outside the US. So the concern is, yes, people in the US are getting a lot of products that probably, if they were manufactured in the US, they probably wouldn't pass FDA scrutiny. We just have, I don't know if you know the international cadre within the FDA. That's not that big.
Okay, so that's fair. So I guess it's just I'm stuck semantically on the word unregulated. So really what I think he's arguing for is stronger oversight.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
Okay. Question I have for you. I'm thinking about this quality-centric culture that we're creating. One thing we haven't addressed yet is some of the obstacles that one might see. So, what are some of the common obstacles people will encounter when engaging in this type of initiative? And what are some tactics and strategies that they can implement in order to overcome those?
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
Sure. So, we've got, we're working toward a quality-driven culture. Okay. Um, and we've got leadership support. We understand short-term, long-term outcomes. But one of the things we haven't talked about is what are some of the common obstacles that somebody engaging in this type of initiative might encounter? And what are some strategies and tactics that they could use in order to overcome any of those, common obstacles when engaging in this type of initiative?
I mean, there are a lot of obstacles as far as financial. I mean, you're trying to make some changes in an organization. You need to prove it. I mentioned ROI earlier, return on investment. You have to show somebody that this is going to be a benefit, and whether it's compliance, financial, efficiency gains, et cetera. But you have to prove there's a benefit there. You have to have similar-minded people within the organization that want and believe in the same things you do. And if you don't have people that have share your strategy, your direction, you need to replace them with people that will fulfill that vision that you have for the organization. If you don't, all you're doing is you're beating your head against the wall, because you need those like-minded people within the organization. So I would say financial, the return on investment, the people within the organization, and getting people behind you. And we mentioned leadership earlier. You know, you need the leadership of the organization, the senior leaders of the organization, to support the efforts. But also, a lot of times it's up to us to define, negotiate, and justify why we want to do something. And I don't know if you know Simon Sinek.
Oh
He
yeah,
wrote a book,
your
Start
why.
with Why. Yeah, start with why. If people don't understand why, they don't care about what or who or anything like that. But you got to start with the why and be very simple in the explanation. And if you can do that and you can convince others, then you're in a much better position. But if you
Mm.
can't, I mean, sorry, you failed.
Mm. Yeah, that makes sense. Um, I have two questions as we wrap up the podcast. Um, when again people are engaging in this initiative, is there a specific moment or experience one might encounter where they say, "We've done it"? Mission, the Bush post 9/11, mission accomplished banner. What is that? What does that moment look like? How do people know that while it does require maintenance, that they've achieved their objective? So that's question number one. And then the second question I had for you is, what would you like to leave the audience with before we close?
Okay, so I would say perfection doesn't exist. You never get there. Okay, I when I talk to people, I try to develop people, coach people, mentor people. Um, there's certain people that I cannot help. Okay, I can't
Mm,
coach, I can't mentor, I can't do anything with, because they're already perfect. When they think they're perfect, they can't get better. I can't help them.
mm,
And that's a mindset thing. So if you believe your organization is perfect and it can't get better, it won't. Okay, you're going to be in trouble if you believe that. It's about continuous improvement. It's about focusing. It's about identifying risks and moving forward every single day. It doesn't matter how well you did at the last FDA inspection or global regulatory inspections. Never stop trying, never stop improving, and do not become complacent as an organization, because you will fail eventually and you will find out that you're not as good as you think you are.
mm.
So when you think you're perfect, you should look in the mirror and have somebody else tell you how imperfect you are, because that's a problem.
Yeah, I would say so. And sometimes people need that reality check, unfortunately. But if they absorb it, then there's a pathway for improvement. Just a short little story. When I was in seventh grade, I I tell this story often. And I kind of lost all my friends, and I was talking to my dad. I said, I've lost all my friends. They don't like me. And I had to hear this. My father said, "You know why?" And I said, "Why?" He goes, "Because you're an asshole." And I was like, "Wow, he didn't sugarcoat it. He didn't." He told me what I needed to hear, and that was, believe it or not, one of the pivotal moments in my life where I started looking at myself. And what I found out I was doing, and this is one of the things I passed on to my kids, is I didn't understand the difference between playing and teasing. So the definition that I use for playing and teasing is, playing is when, well, whether how you know if you're playing or you're teasing somebody is how they interpret it, right? So if I'm doing, my kids are doing something with somebody and they're laughing, that's playing. Even though they're doing the exact same thing, and then that person now doesn't want to do it anymore, it's shifted to teasing. And so, that's that. But, that's kind of a long ago lesson that I learned, that again, I thought I was perfect and found out I wasn't. Chris, I
You
really
asked me
appreciate.
one thing. I'm sorry. You asked me one more thing. What do I want to leave the audience with?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Yes.
So I would suggest I have learned more from my failures than my successes. Okay. If you can continue to learn more from your failures, you will have less failures over time. You
Mm.
will control a lot of things that you didn't think were in your control. I mean, there are some things that are not in your control. However, those failures have built me as a senior leader in my organization in quality. For
Mm.
example, there was one time where I had an FDA inspection, and the investigator wouldn't leave the organization until I recalled a bunch of product. I
Mm.
recalled 106 lots of product at one point, okay,
Oh,
at one time. And it was a voluntary recall, but not too voluntary.
right. Yeah,
It was,
that's always the case, right?
and it was, the funny thing is, we didn't manufacture our product. We had a contract manufacturer manufacturing the product, and the contract manufacturer didn't have to recall any of their own product made on the same manufacturing line because they were in a different state, regulated by a different district.
Mm.
But I learned a big, important lesson at the time through that failure, in that it doesn't matter if you have a contract manufacturer that manufactures your product. You are responsible.
Yep,
Okay.
100%.
You are responsible for every contract manufacturer, contract test lab that you have. And it's up to you to manage them appropriately and make sure they're compliant, because it doesn't matter if you do it or somebody else does it for you. You own the market authorization. You are responsible.
Yep, love it. The other thing I was just going to say is, in terms of learning from your failures, is over time, the failures become less deflating. So early on in your career, if you fail, oh my God, what's wrong with me? Da 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 da. But as you have build your own self-confidence and understanding that you're gonna step out and take risks for the benefit of whatever you're working toward, understanding that inherently there is risk involved, which could equate to failure. As long as you're willing and open to learn from that and make the necessary adjustments, the stomach blows become a little bit less intense. So that's
I agree.
yeah. Chris, thank you so much for joining. I really appreciated your insight and everything that you contributed to this conversation. And for everybody listening, as always, if you find conversations like this valuable, please share it with a colleague or your professional network. If you have not already, subscribe to get new updates of new episodes at thefdagroup.com/podcast, and follow the FDA Group on LinkedIn. If you would like to connect about project or resource needs, head over to thefdagroup.com to get in touch, or feel free to connect with me personally on LinkedIn. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we will see you all next time.
Thank you.